Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Life Paranormal Research Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds. And we got a great show tonight. We got a special guest. I met her at the Warrens Paracon in September. And she's an actress. She's also a paranormal investigator. And we'll let her fill you in on all the details and what she's got going on. And she's here to share her adventures with us. Please welcome my guest at this time, Mallory Mack.
Hi there. Thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
And we got one in the chat already saying Laura Cameron. Hello, Laura.
Hi.
Welcome in. So tell my audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So my name is Mallory. I have been in the film and television industry for many, many years, my entire adult life. And I kind of maybe 5 years ago fell into travel and adventure and more kind of the exploration side of that. And with that, I joined the Explorers Club, which is a centuries-old club dedicated to field science exploration, things of that nature. Right now, it's a lot of ocean and space, but it's, exploration as a whole. And kind of my involvement in that and film industry combined together, and I created Weird World Adventures, which is a show that highlights this world in a different way. We cover a lot of haunted places, paranormal stuff. We also cover just, strange people living really unique lives, because everybody, I think, is a little bit weird. I'm definitely a weirdo. And I think when you kind of lean into that and highlight what makes you so unique and different, it creates a new level into the world. And the weirdest places I go, anytime I go anywhere, when you ask, like, what's the weirdest place here, that's always the place that kind of defines, that society, that area. So I think there's just something so special in what makes us all a little bit weird. So Weird World Adventures highlights that. And it's a television show available now on Amazon Prime. And it's also, we have an accompanying podcast. So it's kind of its whole brand, and then a blog as well with Mallory'sAdventures.com. So it kind of turned into its whole thing, and dedicate my time now to doing that in all forms of media.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you stay pretty busy doing it.
I do, yes, very much so. We have, for Mallory'sAdventures.com, we have 3 articles coming out a day now, so we'll always have content coming out every day. We are filming 10 episodes of Weird World Adventures for season 2, which will be done filming in June, and then it will release in September. So it'll be here again for the fall. But season 1 is available now on Amazon Prime, and then the podcast comes out weekly. So we're always chugging along.
Awesome. I remember you at the Warrens Paracon. You brought us that doll you have.
Francis, yes. That was me and my partner, Michael, were coming back from the beach, and we were passing through Williamsburg. And I love the Williamsburg Antique Mall. It's wild and crazy, and there's so many just bizarre things there. And we found this doll. It's like a rag doll, and it has like eyelashes kind of like put into it. It just does not look like a normal doll would look. She doesn't. And immediately my partner is like, well, we have to take her. Like, obviously this doll needs a home. I'm like, do we? I'm not a doll person. I don't love dolls.
Right.
And somehow he convinced me. So we wound up leaving that day with Francis the doll and a battle axe, which was a very strange purchase. And when we went up to the counter, the woman definitely judged us harshly. Like, what is this? Doll and a battle axe? I'm like, yeah. you know, just a normal Tuesday.
Has that doll got up and walked around yet or moved or anything?
You know, thankfully, no. It's flopped around a little bit. I'm surprisingly less afraid of her than I thought I was going to be. If she does wind up like she's in our room, I was like, this thing is not going to be in our room, and she somehow still found a way on my dresser, and I'm like, I'm okay with this. I don't know. She isn't. It's almost comforting. Like she's not as intimidating as I thought it was going to be.
I know I remember my dad, he read it for you and was able to pick up what's on it.
Yeah. Yeah, she very intimidating. There's definitely something going on there.
Did you see the ones that we had brought in from at the Warrens Paracon?
I saw some dolls. I don't know which ones in particular. There were so many
We
dolls.
brought a whole tote in at the end of the Paracon to give the Nesper,
Mm-hmm. I know I
and
didn't see that.
there was 4 of them.
Oh.
So they're in the Warrens Occult Museum. So
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a good place for them. They keep it blessed, right? So
yeah,
yes. There was Kelsey Davies was there with her doll Lola too. I remember
hmm
Lola being around, and yeah, there's just so many dolls. I don't know.
Eric had his because we were checking out Eric's doll at the VIP party. He was bringing it around, and
Yes. Yes. I just can't put my guard down when there's dolls around. It's not my element. Although, I don't know, I've met Annabelle, I mean, several times now, and I feel like we're good, right? Like we have a mutual like I don't bother you, you don't bother me relationship.
that don't always work with Annabelle though.
No, I like to think that though. But yeah, I mean it's funny because I was terrified of Raggedy Ann growing up. Like I did not like Raggedy
Mm,
Ann. I had nightmares about Raggedy Ann. We were not friends, and it was like known. And my brother, like into adulthood, like we just know I don't like Raggedy Ann. And I don't know. There was one Halloween where he was telling me, Annabelle is real and it's based like it's based on a real doll and it's a Raggedy Ann. And I thought he was messing with me because he knows I don't like Raggedy Ann.
right.
And then I fell down the rabbit hole of he's not messing with me, and this is a real thing.
Yeah,
Man.
she's. I made the mistake watching one of Ed Warren's videos on YouTube, and they zoomed in on her eyes, and
Mm.
I ended up going to sleep that night, and I saw Annabelle,
Ugh.
and she's known for that. She'll connect to you telepathically if you stare
Mm-hmm.
her in the eyes.
Yeah. When we filmed Weird World Adventures, the pilot episode, we went to the Warrens Occult Museum and interviewed Tony and everybody. And my camera guy was alone in the museum by himself, briefly just getting B-roll. Like he just like went right in and didn't expect her. I guess he wound up where she was behind him. And like he
Mm,
didn't expect it and then turns around and was like, oh, like I mean he got like the pop right out of her and screams like, what's happening in there? He was like, just so you know, the doll's over there. So just don't do what I did.
Laura Cameron asked who has Annabelle. The Nesper has Annabelle. It's locked up in the Warrens Occult Museum in Connecticut.
Yeah, she's behind that whole special blessed sacred case with the cross on it and the sigil of Michael and yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I know Father Bob was just there Sunday of last weekend, blessed the museum again.
I need to I have family in Connecticut, so I'm always kind of up near Monroe, and I like we've been talking like, man, I need to go back because it's been so long, and I didn't fully take in everything that was there.
Yeah, they've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be with all that pressure in there, with all that demonic stuff that they've got in there, and I know the shadow doll. She's no joke.
Mhm.
She
Yeah.
uh she was out here at Missouri State Penitentiary, and we did a session with her,
Mhm.
and we got some results from her, and we were downstairs doing an Estes method, and we were I was picking up on the objects upstairs. So was Dan when he was taking people around doing the Estes. They were
Mhm.
picking up on the objects upstairs.
Wow. Oh. It's funny how I don't know, when we're in the zone, I don't know, when we're investigating or just somewhere, like, I feel like I'm a different person, like, I'm on and I'm like, "Okay, nothing is gonna scare me," and I'm in my zone, and I wanna run towards anything and everything I see, and then when I'm out and, like, the cameras are off and I'm done, I'm like, "Okay, I'm done now." I don't need to be around me. And do you know Elizabeth Saint? She was in, like, I think, Paranormal Lockdown and Ghosts of Shepherdston.
Yep.
Okay. She was on my show with me, and we did several episodes and investigations together, and we were in Asheville, North Carolina for one of them, and we were doing this investigation on this, like, haunted bridge, and it was very bizarre. Like, the things the we had an executioner's block app which kind of, like, cycles through guttural sounds, and it's like a spirit box, but it doesn't connect to the radio. It just,
Right.
like, cycles through audio, and the idea is that it can be manipulated to say things. And it kept saying James, Jimmy, Jim, and, like, at the times we're trying to communicate, we can't quite understand what it's saying, and we go do some research and then come back and, like, there was a man named James that actually had taken his life in that area. So it was very, and we knew someone happened, we didn't know the name, and there was just a lot of things that happened, a lot of things that almost seemed more than a coincidence. And then at one point, Elizabeth says, "What do you want me to do?" And the box says, "Hang." And then, my camera guy's like, "Go, like, hang out." And it's like, "Hang out and hang." And it was just so,
Mm-hmm.
like, creepy. And we didn't hear it at the time because it's like the way that the box worked was it almost was indecipherable in the moment. But then when you go back and you listen to it through the camera, it was much clearer. And we're like, "Oh my God." And I know we went back and we reviewed some of it, and I was like, "Okay, I'm done now." Like, we had this great experience, and this is a lot, and I'm gonna go to bed. And she's like, "Well, the hotel's supposed to be haunted. Let's just stream a little bit and put the box on while we, like, try to go to sleep, and let's talk to it a little bit." And I'm like, "I really don't want to do that right now." And she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I just think it's, like, messing with me because then I don't know, I'm, like, totally not in the mood. I'm just, like, done. And she, like, goes away to go to the restroom, and the box was like, "I'm gonna get you." Like, it just, like, starts messing with me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, see, this is why I'm done now. This is why I'm done now." and, and that was Asheville. Asheville's a wild place.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like us. My dad and I stayed in a haunted hotel, and this hotel's abandoned, actually. There's no
Mhm.
running water or lights, and the rest of my team decided to go to a fancy hotel and spend the night. My dad and I, we're going to stay here.
Mhm.
So we're in the storefront, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, the generator kicks off. So the light we had in the storefront, our cameras all go out. So the building's pitch dark now.
Ugh.
My dad says, "Hey, wake up." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Look in the doorway." And here's this black figure about 6'5" standing in the doorway looking at us.
Mm-mm. Wow.
So we didn't freak. We just figured it was probably the owner. He loved
Mhm.
that place. He was just checking on his guests to make sure we were all right since the power went out.
Mhm. Yeah. That's very cool.
Looks like we had another question. So the Warrens Cult Museum open to the public? No, it's not open to the public due to zoning issues, but they do bring the objects out to Paracons, and they do the Devil on the Run tour with them. The only one they don't bring is Annabelle on the Devil on the Run tour because they won't travel cross country with her. But they bring the Shadow Doll, the Fire Doll, and a few others.
Mhm. And their Paracon was in Gettysburg this past year, and they did bring Annabelle to that.
Yep. Because
Mhm.
I think they're only like 3 or 4 hours away from Connecticut, so.
Mhm.
Have you talked to Wade to hear what they actually do to bless
N
all that when they bring him out?
No.
It is they do a lot of binding stuff. He actually puts them to sleep
Mm.
so they can travel with them, and then when they're in the vehicle, they don't acknowledge them, they don't talk about them. They
Mhm.
just do like a normal ride, bless the car, everything.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be intimidating. I wouldn't wanna travel in the car with Annabelle. Yeah.
Laura asked, do you know New Jersey Paranormal?
I don't. It sounds familiar. Do you?
Actually, I do. Yeah, I know
Mhm.
New Jersey Paranormal. I know a lot of them.
Mhm.
And then April says, I just wouldn't want to do anything with those things. I don't
Yeah.
blame her. I mean,
Yeah. I'm not like I'm more of like a what's the word? Like artifacts collector as far as like anthropology. I
mhm,
studied anthropology specializing in mythology, folklore, occult studies, all of the, the cultural kind of stuff. So whenever I go anywhere around the world, I come back with some cool artifact or something interesting. I don't know.
right.
It seems safer and more eccentric. So my office is, adorned with all of that.
Do you guys do like urban exploring on your show too? Like abandoned places and
Yes, I love urban exploring. We haven't done much of it. We did an interview at the Pump House here in Richmond, which is it's like not open, but they occasionally do events there. So places sometimes that are trying to reopen. But I do want to hire a cataphile to do the catacombs of Paris, like the legit way, like where you go into, there's
mhm,
200 miles of the tunnels under Paris and only about I think a mile of it is open for visitors, and there's like hidden secret movie theaters down there. There's all these different landmarks and rooms. There's old like World War II bunkers. There's so many things, and there's an active map that people are constantly updating with like where you can get in and where you go, but you really need a guide to be able to do it, and they call
right.
themselves cataphiles. So I want to do that for the next season of the show for season 3. So we're working on that. That's like the ultimate urban exploration, in my opinion.
Yeah, that sounds. I've heard of it
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen pictures of it. Yeah, that'd be something cool to check out.
I did the sanctioned mile long walk through it when I was there before, and it's unreal. I mean, there's you go through, and it's a lot further down than you think it is. I think it's like 5 stories underground. So you're going and going and going and going. And then you get down there, and there's a little ways that are just tunnel. And then there's this archway that says, stop. This is the Empire of the Dead. And then you go through, and it's just there. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of bones just, stacked in all these different ways. And they used to, I think, bless everybody individually before they would go through. And then they did a mass blessing of it when they kind of opened it up more for the public, like, well, this is what we're going to do. And it's wild. It's a pretty crazy experience. And I did the Sedlec ossuary in Prague too, which is like that bone church that you see all the pictures of, where they have like the
Yeah,
chandelier of bones and like the coat of arms. And we like doing ossuaries.
nice. Yeah, I would love to go over to Paris and do some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Rob Dermarest, he's done a lot of that stuff overseas, and he says it's pretty crazy over there because he was on Ghost Hunters International, so
Yeah.
they went and they were all overseas, and then he did Haunted Australia, and he says it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy over there the amount of paranormal activity you see over there.
I mean, it makes sense because I mean, we're the Europe at least is so old. The like there's so much history there. And we just kind of like scrape the surface of having history here. Like, at least the places we go, they're not that old. The places you go in Europe, they are old.
Yeah.
And there's just so much there.
And you answered Laura's question. She asked, "Aren't there skeletons in there?"
Yes. Lots and lots and lots. It's like broken down and organized by type of bone. Like it was, gosh, when they were like forgotten. The catacombs were forgotten, and it's a mystery why they were even built. And they rediscovered them, I want to say in like the 1600s, something like that, 1700s. They were rediscovered. And it was around the time when the cemeteries, the bones were like rising up out of the ground, because the ground is not like made to bury things in Paris. So they were like, well, all these like bodies are rising up and we don't know what to do with them. So they just threw them down into these tunnels that they found. And then there was an inspector who decided like, well, we should make this something like pretty and visitable, and thought he was doing, I guess, a great service. And then you see it and you're like, well, it's questionable whether or not it's tasteful. I don't know, right? Like it's like, I think he felt like he was honoring them, but then you see it and you're like, they're just displayed so strangely, and they're all mixed together with just bones everywhere, and by different types of bones, and kind of sculpturized, and you're like, oh, this is some like anything, not like anything I've seen before. And the Sedlec ossuary in Czech Republic is under a church, so it's like supposed to be a religious thing, which is interesting.
Greg asks, "Have you been to the catacombs off the Appian Way in Old Rome?"
No, but I would love to do that. There is, so they made a replica of the catacombs of Rome in Washington, D.C. I don't know why, but there's a monastery in Washington, D.C. that has a replication of the catacombs of Rome under it. And so I did that. I went to the catacombs in D.C. that are like honoring the catacombs in Rome. And there's only one body in that one because it's like supposed to be just a replication. But I do definitely want to go to the catacombs in Rome. And also, I think the Brno ossuary is the second largest in the world, and that one's in Slovakia. And I stayed in Slovakia for a month or so last year because my boss from one of the magazine brands I worked for had a house in Slovakia. So when I go back, we're definitely going to that one too.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to fill me in and let me know how that goes.
Yes, I'm excited. I don't know. I love the combination of like the explorative feel, like kind of like the Indiana Jones feel, but then with the, the creepy paranormal side to it.
Right. Have you done anything out here in Missouri?
I have not. I have not gotten out to most of like the middle of the country. I did a lot in California, done a lot on the East Coast, Eastern Europe, and Germany, because I work with Germany a lot. But I'm flying out to South Dakota to do an interview on a fallout shelter that's out there. But that's like the extent of like the middle of the country that we've kind of explored so far.
If you do get to Missouri, I recommend Missouri State Penitentiary
Okay.
to explore that.
I love to. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, you'll enjoy that, especially if you do the overnight where you're self-guided. You only get a quick
Oh, yeah.
tour, and then you're on your own for the rest of the night till about 6 in the morning.
Oh, that's very cool. I would love that. I did get to the one thing I was just like dream come true ecstatic was for the first episode of season 2 of Weird World, which I'm really excited about. We got to stay the night in Dracula's castle
Oh,
in
nice.
Transylvania, in Bran Castle, and I was so excited. It was just a dream come true. And we had like someone we interviewed about the property, and he was so passionate about it. And he really, it was like he believes in vampires, right? I mean, like just when you'd ask him questions, it was just ingrained in them to like, oh yes, this is real. Like this really
Right.
happened. And I'm like, okay. And then I think we got to like right outside the castle, you kind of leave through the dungeon. And in Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's where he gets killed by Quincy Morris. And so, he's like, this is where Quincy Morris killed Dracula. We're like, well, in the book, though. Like, in the book. It was very cool.
Laura said, "How old is that? Are you talking about Missouri State, Laura, or are you talking about Dracula's castle?" And Greg said he got lost in the catacombs in Rome.
Oh gosh.
And
That would be terrifying.
Victoria says, "Hell, Greg, I get lost in Walmart."
Oh, that's pretty good.
Laura, Missouri State was built in the 1800s, and it's the bloodiest 47 acres in Missouri. They've had everything from guards get killed in there to inmates. So it's pretty bad. They had one guy that actually died, cell house 4. They let him out of their cells to go eat breakfast, and they would eat right down in the hall down at the bottom. Well, 2 inmates busted in the guy's cell and stabbed his eyes out and then stabbed him, and he managed to crawl out onto the catwalks, and that's where he died, was out on the catwalks. They had one inmate get killed in front of a guard.
Wow.
And the guards back then were only armed with a billy club and a whistle. That was it. So that place is pretty active.
Wow.
Especially in the dungeon cells, you go down there and you'll get activity down there. They housed the firebug JB down there, and he stayed down there for like 18 years and went blind because all the cells had no lights in them. They were dark.
Mm-hmm.
They bring him out like once a day to shower into the hallway where the lights were, and then he was right back in that dark.
Wow.
He had some guy when he got out write a book for him about being in the dungeon for 18 years. He got shoved down there for setting the prison on fire, which killed a guard and several inmates.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's crazy.
Then, if you like Civil War history, we got a bunch of it out here too.
Yeah, I liked going to Gettysburg for the Paracon because I'd never been there before. I never had gotten to go there. But it's funny, it's 3 hours from Virginia, and I had no idea it was so close.
Yeah, Laura, there was a guy in regards to Dracula. It's Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
He was known as the Dracula.
Vlad Tepes III. He was the king of Wallachia, and he was born in Sigashora. And it's funny because there's a lot of rumors that he never actually stepped foot in Bran Castle, but the people there are adamant that he did. And the kind of way that it was explained to me was that he was from Sigashora, which is in Romania, and he was the king of Wallachia. And this was kind of the in between in the route, so he would stop on his routes through Ward in that castle to stay the night in the in between. And they very much think he's a hero there. I mean, like whenever you go there and they're like, this is the hero of our.
Oh yeah, I've heard they worship him a lot out there.
We did this Dracula experience where you go in and it's like this whole art it's a whole art piece thing, like a whole performative thing, and they have movies showing and sculptures and things, and it kind of goes through his story, like the story of Vlad Tepes. And your whole thing is he a hero? Was he a villain? And they obviously want you to be like, oh yeah, he was a hero. And they had us hooked. And then you get to this one room and you're like, well, I didn't like peasants or homeless people. And you're like, oh, I don't think this is going to end well. And so I invited everyone that was homeless and poor into this giant banquet in the city. And it's like, okay. And I asked them if they wanted to stay homeless and poor forever. And they said no. So I burned them all to the ground. And you're just like, oh, okay. All right, maybe we shouldn't have put that one in there. And then, you go through it at the end. They're like, well, do you think he's a hero or a villain? And everyone's saying hero. And we're like, but did you guys see the room where he burned everybody? Remember that room?
They said he used to impale people. That's why they gave him the nickname Vlad
Mhm.
the Impaler.
Yeah, on in the battles, yeah, he would impale his enemies. Yeah, fun guy.
Yeah, sounds like it.
They also recently had reevaluated some of his DNA, and they believe he might have had hemolacria, which is a condition which would make you cry blood. It's like a weird blood condition, so that could have like kind of contributed to some of the vampire, lore. This because this guy's crying blood.
Greg said try Brushy Mountain in Tennessee or Bayou at St. Albans.
Mm, sounds good. I've been out in Tennessee a lot this year for Weird World, and we're writing a book about the haunted hikes of the Great Smoky Mountains for Falcon Guides. So,
Yeah, Brushy Mountain's a good place.
mm-hmm.
The one inmate that was in there that assassinated Martin Luther King, he was housed in Missouri State Penitentiary out here, and he escaped from here and then assassinated Dr. King, and then they caught him and they housed him in Brushy Mountain.
Mm-hmm. That's very cool. We were. Have you heard of the Brown Mountain Lights?
Yep.
Okay, so we went to Wise Man's View to see the Brown Mountain Lights for the first season of my show a couple years ago, and it was just so foggy we couldn't see anything. So when we were in the Smokies this last time, we came back through to do it again to try to see the Brown Mountain Lights, and we did like we saw. I mean, it's funny because my partner was like, "We're not going to see anything," and we like. I mean, the whole time we were there, it was unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's wild, and they think now that it's ball lightning, which is it's like very unexplained, and it's
Yeah.
not what you would expect. Like I don't know. It looked like the first thing I saw looked like a firefly, and I'm like, well, there's no. Why was there a firefly out here right now? And then all of a sudden, it just like pops, and there's like 15 little fireflies swerving in and out of each other. And then you're like, okay, well, I see why they would call them ghost lights, or they kind of look like fire
Yeah.
embers or fairies just like scattering about. And I'm like, what was that? And then there's just this bright light just like shining on and off, like kind of around it. And it's all below you. Like I'm thinking it'd be out in the distance. It's like just kind of right
Right.
here below us. I'm like, what is it? It was unlike anything I've ever seen before.
We
It
got
was
something
very,
similar to that here in Missouri, down in Joplin, Missouri. It's called the Joplin Spook Light. And it's just like
mm-hmm.
this big white ball. It gets about that big of light in the sky, and they couldn't figure out what it was. They've had military, NASA, everybody check it out, and nobody could debunk it, figure out where it's
Mm-hmm.
coming from.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep, it just appears in the sky. People come from miles around and they'll park on the side of the road just to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
We had another question for you. What is the name of your show again, and how do I watch? Thanks.
Thank you. It's called Weird World Adventures, and it's on Amazon Prime. If you search Weird on Amazon Prime, it should come up, but Weird World Adventures.
Laura says fascinating. Have you checked out Waverly Hills Sanatorium yet?
No, I haven't. I've heard a lot about it, though. A lot of people I know have been over there.
I've been there. I can tell you it's good. Make sure you go kind of like the beginning of June.
Mm-hmm.
If you start going towards the middle of summer, it gets hot in there.
Yeah. Oh.
And kind of plan it when you're going to get a thunderstorm,
Oh, okay.
because then it
Oh,
gets
yeah.
active.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine that.
It showed us it's the most haunted place in America with the experiences we've had there. We had a lot of personal experiences firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
We had a figure run right between us down a
Wow.
hallway. We were doing a little bit of role playing. And I was acting like I was sick laying on the table, and one of my team members was yelling, "We need a doctor in here. He's not going to make
Mhm.
it." Our motion light kicked on, and then we heard a noise. I went to sit up and I couldn't move. I was being pinned to the surgery table.
Wow.
So
Wow. That's crazy.
the body shoot is also intense too.
Oh, I can imagine.
The challenge is you have to do that at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
I think that was on Ghost Hunters, right? I think I remember
Mhm.
that on Ghost Hunters.
We did it at 3 o'clock in the morning and we went all the way to the bottom of it.
Mhm.
And we were snapping still pictures and we had this black mass which filmed the whole body shoot coming down at us.
That's crazy.
And then we heard the gate up top shut.
Mhm.
Well, that gate hasn't moved in years. It's rusted open to the point it won't move.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, it's a good place, especially if you see the creeper.
Mm.
We got to see him. He greeted us on one of the catwalks outside there.
Oh my gosh.
He was crawling across the floor, and my one member at the time, she went to smoke, and so I was just milling around the atrium right there, and I was had the camera pointed at the catwalk, and I was just looking down there, and I see this black thing crawling. So I call another member over. I'm like, "You see that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see that." I'm like, "You keep camera pointed at it. I'm headed towards it." Fast as I got to it, it went up over the balcony down to the next floor.
Oh my gosh.
And they say it's a man that used to be in a wheelchair, and he would go down
Mhm.
to maintenance every week and get his wheelchair oiled. Well, he went down there and there was nobody in maintenance. He yelled for him. He ended up face planting off the loading dock onto the pavement and killed him.
Oh,
So, and you said you got some books coming out that you're
I
writing?
do. Yes. So, I have I lost the I have, Haunted Hikes of the Great Smoky Mountains, which will cover, like, the legends and lore of the Great Smokies, and I didn't realize, I guess, how many, like, different types of, like, legends and cryptids and things exist from the Great Smoky Mountains. Like, there's like a fairy house, and there's supposedly a witch that was haunting the woods, and there's a lot of different ghost stories. So we're writing a hiking book for Falcon Guides that like encompasses all of the legends and
Mm.
lore of the Smokies. And then I've also been working a bit on an atlas of 500 of the most strange and unusual places around the world.
You should do the Appalachian Mountains too. There's a lot of strange stuff that goes on out there.
Yeah, we're right over by there. So I was hoping to be able to do that at some point, because that would be, I mean, like we're right by Shenandoah in the Appalachians. So
Oh, okay. Yep.
yeah.
And I know there was a movie actually called The Hunted that was written about the Appalachian Mountains about a guy that was in college, and the actual guy that it happened to actually stars in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they were hunting this piece of property that nobody was able to hunt. And they'd go out to their deer stand early in the morning and they'd hear this woman screaming through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Never see her. And they heard her one day get closer. In the movie, you can hear her get closer. And then she let out this scream, but you don't see nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So they put out game cameras because they were coming back and their side by side was ripped apart.
Mm.
So they put up a camera on the tree. So next morning when they parked there, they come back that night and they caught her on camera. And then that woman was screaming through the woods and she grabbed a hold of his cameraman. They were filming a hunting show
Yeah.
and it drug him through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the legend is that she lived in a cabin up there and she had an abusive husband. He would beat her, and that's why she'd be screaming because he was beating her all the time. And she ended up taking a shotgun and shooting him, and then went down by the river and killed herself.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So that's one of the urban legends out of the Appalachian Mountains.
Mhm.
And I know they got a lot of cryptid activity out there as well.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll have to. We were trying to do one with the Shenandoah, but everyone just loves the Smokies so much that it wound up like well, we should do the Smokies first.
Yeah, I mean the Appalachia, you got that all the way from West Virginia all the way down.
Yeah.
It even stretches in the parts of PA going towards Gettysburg a little bit.
Mhm.
Laura asks what's cryptid. Cryptids are like your Bigfoot, your Grassman, Rougarous, stuff like that are your cryptids, which are a little different than paranormal. They try to say Bigfoot is also part of the paranormal realm because they do shapeshift. Then you got the one that's down in New Orleans that they Chupacabra is another one that's a cryptid.
Yeah.
Mothman, Jersey Devil.
Comes from cryptozoology. It's anything that hasn't quite been discovered officially as an animal yet.
Yep. I have a buddy that does Bigfoot researching out here in Missouri. He goes down to Mark Twain National Forest
Mhm.
and does a lot of work down there. And he told me he had one actually vanish in front of his eyes, transformed to
Wow.
like an orb, and just disappeared.
That's crazy.
Because we're supposed to go out on an expedition with him, and we're going down to check out the haunted cemetery that's in the middle of Mark Twain National Forest.
Mhm. That's very cool. I love random cemeteries in the woods.
Yeah, they say this one's actually a demonic cemetery. I had a guy reach out to
Mhm.
me about it, but the Bigfoot guy was telling me that he went down there. There was this big cross that's got to be a good 1,000 pounds
Mhm.
laying on the ground. You can't get a crane in there because it's so overgrown. Next time he went back, it was standing straight up.
Mhm.
So, and then you got your local grassman that's in like West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky.
Mhm.
That's another Bigfoot. Out here, we have the Momo monster,
Mhm.
which is smaller than your average Bigfoot, but he's a lot more hairier, aggressive, and he's got 3 fingers on each hand, red glowing eyes, and 3 toes on each foot. Is what our Bigfoot is out here.
Mhm.
Were you able to check out the Jenny Wade house and stuff when you were in
No,
Gettysburg?
you know what? Kelsey did when she was there. I was in and out so fast we didn't really get to see anything this time, but we're planning to come back for an episode of the show. So I hope to be back soon to check it out. We're also going to Salem next month for the first
Okay,
time,
yeah.
which will be fun. I have always wanted to go, and I personally like I'm all about Elizabeth Montgomery. She's like my spirit animal. I love her so much. And they have like the little like statue to Elizabeth Montgomery there for Bewitched. So I'm excited to get to do that.
April asks, have you encountered a jinn?
I have not. It's funny. I we just recently I've been studying, like I said, the anthropology stuff, and there's a course I was taking on occult stuff, and jinns are very relevant in it. And it was interesting because in the original culture for jinn, it was like one of the main jinns, like it was their version of Satan, like kind of their version of a
Mm,
demon. And and it's interesting. There's a lot more to that than I think I realized, but I've been reading up on jinn a lot recently.
yeah, I've never experienced one. We got called for to assist on a case that was supposed to be in one. We were going to take it over for another team that was too busy, and the lady never contacted us about it. So,
Hmm. Have you
but
ever played Phasmophobia?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like that they have the different categories, and like gin is one of the categories. That's
Yeah.
what I think of.
Yeah. We've dealt with some elemental stuff before.
Mhm.
Draconian starseed,
Mm.
which is like a reptilian elemental that's part of the earth. They actually look humanoid,
Mhm.
and they're brought in to do good or harm. Case we dealt with it on, they were brought in to do harm.
Mhm.
It was there to harm the stepmom. We were actually able to send it back on its way where it belongs.
Mhm.
So you'll find them in your travels when you're out and about.
That's crazy.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks
Thank
for tuning
you.
in. April says there are snake entities and ancient writings everywhere. Yeah.
It's interesting how many cultures have the same legends and myths that are just presented a little differently, but they're very similar. A lot of those legends kind of, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you find similar pieces of the same stories everywhere.
Yep. Well, that's like how we were talking backstage about Seven Gates of Hell,
Mhm.
how they're all over the country.
Yeah. It's it's really, yeah, and the one in New Orleans, it's like specifically from voodoo and the voodoo religion.
Hmm.
And we did an episode on voodoo for season 2, and I very much get into the whole voodoo scene because it's not what you would expect it to be. Like there's Haitian voodoo, and then in New Orleans it's very much like voodoo Catholicism. So it's
Hmm.
very heavily rooted in Catholicism because it was like a way for the slaves that they brought over to practice voodoo in a way that was like approved. It was if it was like done in a Catholic facade. So a lot of
Right.
the loa, which are like the spirits in voodoo, are like they have like a parallel of a saint in the Catholic religion. And in New Orleans, there's 7 gates that lead to the underworld, which they call Guinea, and there's 7 different loa that guard the way, and you have to present them in a specific order and have offerings for each one. And then supposedly when you get to the end, you meet Baron Samedi, who's the skeleton man with the hat, the top hat that everybody sees like in the New Orleans,
Hmm. Yep.
stuff. He's the one that greets you at the very end that takes you to hell.
Yeah. I don't think I want to meet him. Try to stay away from that voodoo stuff. And
It's interesting. I feel like it gets a very bad rep. Like it's more holistic than people I think realize because it's
hmm,
become the way that it has been perceived and demonized in our culture has made it into something that it's not. Like it didn't start out that way, and it kind of like has become a representation of something different.
right.
Like the voodoo doll was originally a patient chart. Like you would see a voodoo doctor, and they would put the pins in the doll as a representation of you to say, okay, well this person has a headache, and it's this, it hurts this much, so we're going to put 2 pins
Right.
in it in this spot. And it was kind of more of just a piece of information, and then it was seen and misunderstood by people, and then all of a sudden it has a different connotation and a different meaning, and you don't think of a voodoo doll like that anymore because that's just like it was moved and misunderstood and brought through the times, and now it has a different meaning.
I had a lady bring me one back, a voodoo doll, and it had the instructions right on the back of it on how
Hmm.
to use it against people. And
Yeah,
and I was like,
there's a
nope,
lot
I'm
of
not keeping this thing.
there's a lot of like, it's hard to cipher through like what's traditionally and like actually voodoo and what's like tourist. It's become so touristy too. Like they want
Mhm.
it to be like available in the way you would think it would stereotypically be available to tourists when you go. So there's authentic places, and then there's like the tourist places.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you have that even with psychics too. You got your tourist psychics and you got your real ones.
Mhm. Yes.
So that's how that goes too. But I'd love to go to New Orleans, check out Myrtle's plantation.
Yeah, the Myrtle that's on my list of places to go. I love myrtles.
Yeah, it's on my list as well. We're part of Cold Spotters,
Mhm.
which is in British Columbia, Canada. That's founded by Amanda Quill, and we were supposed to do a Cold Spotters road trip to Myrtles one year.
Mhm. That would have been good. There's a photograph from there that's like one of the most compelling like ghost photos that I've ever seen. The one that captures like the two kids on the roof and like
Yep.
yeah, and Chloe, I think her name was, like on the side. Oh my gosh, that picture, it gives me chills.
April wants to know, would you ever want to go to Antarctica?
I really want to go to Antarctica. It's funny because I'm a bad explorer because I can't do boats. I'm just not a boat person. And in order to get to Antarctica right now, like part of it has to be done via boat.
Yep.
And I would do it, but it would be horrible. But I do want to do it. And I'm also a penguin person. I volunteer on expeditions sometimes, and I work with penguins. And I've worked with African penguins on Robben Island, and I've worked with Magellanic penguins in Argentina. So I'm all about penguins. So I mean, I definitely want to go see the Arctic penguins. I've only worked with warm weather penguins, but it'll be brutal. I just know it'll. I can't even. I dive, like I scuba dive, and I do shore dives. Like I can't even be on a boat for like 10 minutes. So
Yeah, that's gonna be cold up there though.
I've done the Arctic Circle up north. And if you have like, they'll give you like jumpsuits. Like if you're in the
Oh
full
yeah.
on thermal jumpsuit, you're good. It's like you just have to be very well outfitted for it. It's the polar nights and the like eternal days that just throw me, because if you go in the winter, if you hit it at the right time, there's no sun at all. And then in the summer, it's sunny all day and night because of where you are. You miss out on like, the
Right.
days. And that one, like when I went, it was no daylight, and that really messed with me.
Sounds like Alaska, because I know Alaska gets that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it's around, I think, the same, like, is it latitude line?
Yeah, I
Up
think so.
there,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like I think it's around the same one, so it's up where you can see the northern lights, and you don't get any sun sometimes.
Yeah, Laura's right. Too much darkness and then light.
Mhm. Yes, it was a cool experience, but I got, like, very sick when I was up there, and I don't fully quite understand what it was or what happened, and I think part of it was just, like, not having any sun, but I was unwell when I was up there.
Is the breathing a lot harder up that way?
I didn't have a problem with that. I was okay. It was more like I think I had some kind of, like, bacterial infection in my intestines. It was like something happened, and then it just, like, then the no sun just added to it. But we did like husky sledding, and that was lovely. And there's parts where you're running with the sled, and I was okay when I did that. I feel like the air was it was if anything, it was almost like fresher because there's like no civilization up there.
Greg asks, have you ever been to Turks Caicos or something like
Turks and
that?
Caicos. I
Yeah.
have not. I know a lot of people that have, but I would definitely love to go there. I've been to Bon Air, which is like one of the ABCs of the Caribbean, kind of out that way. It's near Aruba, and it's just this tiny little island that no one's really heard of. It was very nice. It was a interesting experience. Like it was not. It's very small, like very small.
Oh wow. Yeah, I've never been out of the United States yet. So
Really? Oh my
Most of
gosh.
my
What are you
travel's
waiting
been
for?
most of my travel's been here. We're always so
What's the
busy around here getting called all the time, so it's hard
what's
to
your dream place? Like, where's the place you want to visit outside the country first?
Ireland
Oh, really? Yeah, that's a good one.
because my family comes from Ireland.
Mhm.
Ireland and Scotland.
Mhm. There's a lot of good castles there.
Yeah, I want to go check out that one that's got the elemental in it that hit Dustin Perry.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. Yes. There's Blarney is a like a place of legends too. I can't
Right.
recommend like aside from just the Blarney Stone. I mean, you have to kiss the Blarney Stone, but it also has like a witch's stone and these like wishing stairs and druid circles, and it just has. I mean, you can spend an entire day there, and there's so many legends and stories, and it's very cool.
No, Laura, I haven't been to Canada yet either. We get asked to go, but I haven't been there yet. Amanda keeps trying to drag us up to Canada.
I've never been to Canada either. I feel like I'm slacking.
Well, she's talking to us about going to Seattle this year to investigate. So
Mm. Seattle is another one on my bucket list. I have not been to Seattle, but I hear great things about it.
she's wanting us to do a Paracon with them up there and get
Mhm.
many of the Cold Spotters teams together.
That's very cool.
So, what would you say your most scariest experience on your adventures have been?
That's a great question. You know, I don't know. I don't know if I've been, I think the eeriest, like definitely the eeriest would be Robben Island, which I did a penguin research on Robben Island. And it's an island off of the coast of Cape Town in South Africa. And it's where they held Nelson Mandela. So it has a lot of history. It was an Irish colony. So they have like an Irish graveyard on there. And then it was a leper colony for a while. So there's a leper graveyard. And really the entire island is just like graves from the lepers, but then they just fenced off like a tiny part for tourists, like, oh, here's the leper graveyard. And then it was a World War II base. And then it became the political prison. And there was like a very small group of people living on it for a while recently. And then they operate the museum where people can come in and take tours to see where they held Nelson Mandela and the prison. But nobody, like there's a handful of people that live on it now because the store closed because nobody lived there. So if you're on the island, like you have to go off on a boat to just get supplies and groceries and all the normal stuff. So it's like pretty desolate and like abandoned, minus the people that operate the prison tours occasionally, and they boat tourists out 3 times a day for that. And then they have scientists that are just on the island. They're like the people on the island working with the penguins, and just the unbelievable like amount of history, and just the fact that there's so many graves everywhere there, the fact that we were sleeping in kind of old prison buildings, like political prison, just everything about it was like, this is just eerie. And then there's actually the risk of real poachers. So I was worried about poachers because there's a lot of shipwrecks around there from poachers, and it was a lot of just the environment and the ambiance and the history and all of that stuff made it just like I didn't sleep well when I was living there.
Sounds like that old mining town that's in Montana that you can actually they pay you to be a tour guide and you can live there,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no grocery stores, nothing, and it's a long way in, long way out.
Oh yeah. It's like you stock up for weeks at a time and be like,
Yep,
okay, this is what it's going to be, and we're going to go out X amount of times, and in the winter, you might not get off the island, so you better prepare.
yep. And that
Mm-hmm.
in Montana, they get a lot of snow down through there. And one guy that said earlier, Ed Fry, he's from Montana. He was telling me about it,
Mm-hmm.
and the state of Montana will pay you to actually take people on tours there during the summer, and
Yeah,
they will let you live there. But there's no electricity, no internet, no phone service, nothing.
that sounds too disconnected. I
And
would like being disconnected, but that's too disconnected.
and the town's haunted as well because it's an old mining town.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, it sounds like a fun place to visit, but not to live.
I'd probably be investigating every night if I lived there.
Mm-hmm.
Laura says no way. Yeah, I don't know. There's people that do it though. I've seen
Hmm.
people actually live there.
That's crazy.
Then there's that other town in Ohio that they call it Helltown, and there's people that actually live in Helltown,
Hmm.
and there's no way in, no way out because the road they don't do the road. The road's all broke up and it's all blocked off, so you can't even get in and out. You have to hike in and out of there.
Hmm. That's crazy.
So, so on your other adventures, what other cool places have you been to?
Gosh, so many. We did Bran Castle. There is a salt mine in Romania, in Cluj-Napoca, called Salina Turda. It's all over Instagram and stuff too, where they took an old salt mine and they made it an amusement park. So there's this like weird amusement park with a Ferris wheel and mini golf and rides and ping pong and just all this stuff, and then a boat ride at the bottom in an old salt mine in Transylvania, which is really cool. And while we were there, we did Dracula's birthplace, Sigashora, which is it's very beautiful and very creepy because we kind of wandered up. It has this like arched stairwell up the hill in the middle like of the night. We kind of were just walking and wound up, and then it like leads to the cemetery of the church, which I'm like, well, we don't want to be here in the middle of the night
Right.
in Dracula's birthplace. Like, you make a wrong turn and you're like, oh, I am in the cemetery now. I see what I did there. And that was pretty cool. And we went through a bunch of the castles in Eastern Europe. I love Eastern Europe. It was incredible. And Kachiske is the castle where they imprisoned Elizabeth Bathory. She was the one that bathed in women's blood to try to stay young. And
Oh, okay.
so
Yep.
we,
I know
we
that.
went there. That was very cool. And they had an Iron Maiden, and somehow I wound up in the Iron Maiden. Like, I don't know.
Hey, Janet, welcome in. She says,
Hi.
hey, everyone watching from haunted historical Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, nice. Savannah's on my list to go for Weird World too. Definitely.
And then Laura had a question. Isn't there a road that's on fire? Yeah, that's Silent Hill, Pennsylvania. There's
Mm,
the fire under the ground. That's why the town is all full of smoke and ash.
it's crazy. Natural phenomena sometimes is just as creepy as the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, and they say that town is pretty creepy, Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm. Well, they made those games off of it, right?
Games, they also did movies
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. I knew that from the games and that whole
Yep,
universe.
yep, and they did all those horror movies of Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm. Just like Hill House too. I love the new version of Haunting of Hill House that they did.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. I really liked how they presented hauntings in a way that was cyclical, and how everything kind of influenced everything else in a way that was kind of not in a linear timeline. And I thought that was very clever. And the mom kind of was psychic and was trying to prevent the things she was seeing from happening, and then it kind of made them happen by trying to prevent them from
Mm-hmm.
happening. And there's the cyclical nature of it. I thought it was just very clever.
Yeah, some of those movies are pretty accurate on some of them. My
Hmm.
mentor, Farah, she'll take like your demonic movies, like she did the Conjuring movies, and she'll pick apart what's real and what's Hollywood
Mhm.
on them to show you what demons actually do. And she's done quite a few of those movies, picked them
Mhm.
apart. She did the demon house that Zach Bagans bought. She was able to go
Yeah.
to that one too and do that show. Laura says I'll have to check out Hill House.
Mhm. It was the Mike Flanagan stuff, right? It started with The Haunting of Hill House, and then it was Bly Manor, and I liked Bly Manor because it was like a mystery, but also a
Mhm.
ghost story. And then I think they did what was the vampire one? I'm blanking on what it was called now, but they did that one. That one wasn't quite as good, I didn't think. I thought it could have been condensed quite a bit. And the last one they did was the Edgar Allan Poe one, which I thought was pretty good too. Gotta love Poe. We did a couple interviews at the Poe House recently because it's actually
Oh
like
yeah,
it's right by where I live. So that's like it's interesting. They have a lot of, his famous artifacts and, pieces of his hair, things on display, his like original writings, and it's very cool.
yeah. He was a unique individual. Edgar Allan Poe was.
Mhm.
I like checking out some of his stuff.
Very, very tragic guy. There's every time you think he'd get a break, it just gets worse, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah, even his games were pretty cool too. They made
Yeah.
games of Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, where you
Mhm.
on his writings where you can dive into his mysteries and
Mhm. Oh yeah, I love it. I love Gothic literature, and he was considered one of the fathers of it.
Janet Rose says, "I think there was 3 Silent Hill movies. They were scary. Yeah, there was about 3 of them, and I'll get into all that horror genre.
Me and my brother love like the old cheesy, like old 70s horror. I don't There is the Christopher Lee Draculas are just the top of my game. I think they're so bad in such an enjoyable way. Like I love watching them.
Right. What about the Vincent Price Dracula?
Oh yeah. Anything with Vincent Price. I love Vincent Price. He he had me when I was a kid, like, I don't know, because of he was in Scooby-Doo. They had
Yeah,
an off-branch Scooby-Doo, like the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, and he played himself. Like, he was Vincent Van Ghoul, but it was just like Vincent Price, right? Playing
yeah,
himself, and he's so outlandish, and it was so wonderful. And I'm like, "This guy is great."
yeah. He's a good actor, and I'm actually related to him.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a
That's
cousin of
amazing.
his.
That's
Him and
very cool.
Boris Karloff. That played Frankenstein.
Mhm. Mhm. That's very cool.
Laura
Yeah,
said
he
my
was great.
uncle had old horror films on reel to reel.
Mm.
Yeah, my grandparents had quite a few of those old ones too on reels, and
Mhm.
they had like the old Three Stooges meets Frankenstein,
Right.
Abbott and Costello meets Hercules, and all kinds of stuff. Wolfman.
Those are it's interesting to go back and watch them now because they're not what you would expect almost. And they're classics and they're great, and I'm definitely not saying anything bad about them, but they are not at all a representation of like the source. Like
Right.
when you read Dracula and Frankenstein and all these books, they're so different than how they're portrayed in media. And it's something that I read them much later and was like, "Oh, this is not what I expected at all."
And Greg said Bella Lugosi.
Mhm. Good old Bela Lugosi.
Yep.
I loved, one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it more than I should is the 1999 Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser
Oh,
and Rachel
okay.
Weisz.
Yep.
I love that movie, and Evie O'Connell is like my spirit animal. I just love it so much. But it's funny if you go back and watch the original Universal Mummy, it's the same mummy. It's like the same characters, but just being told in a very different way. It's, Imhotep is the same mummy in the 1930s mummy that he is in the 1999 mummy with Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
And he's still trying to bring back Noxon-a-Moon. Like, it's the same story being told so much later, just in a different way, which I think is fascinating. And if you go down into like the anthropology of it, Imhotep is a real person. And he was actually one of the greatest figures of Egyptian history. Like, he was actually a really good guy. He was the first ever documented physician, like the first named physician in written history. And he was like an architect, and he was this, and he's just this overall incredibly accomplished person. And then somehow Universal came in, well, we're going to make him the villain in our movies. Like, well, how'd that happen?
Well, that's like even the Yul Brynner's old mummy movie too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love Yul Brynner. He was the pharaoh in Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
Some of his Western stuff was good, like the Magnificent Seven that he was in
Mm-hmm.
is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I was just watching the other night House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price.
Yes. That's a good one.
I think that one's a little better than the remakes that they did.
Yes. It's a good one.
If anybody's got any more questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat. See if we got any more. Nope, nobody answered yet. So yeah, if you ever come out to Missouri, just holler at us and we'll show you around and show you some cool historical places.
Thank you so much. I definitely will. I'm going to add that to the future adventures for Weird World.
We've got the historical Beatty Mansion. Go out to Kansas. We got the 1889 McIntyre Villa.
Mm-hmm.
The Sally House is out this way. We're actually not too far from the Villisca Axe Murder House.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got our local legends around here, the Hans Mill Massacre and the Slagle Mill. That one is a good historical haunted place.
Mm-hmm.
He was a judge in Livingston County, and he was accused of killing his wives.
Wow.
He was married like 6 times. 5 of
Jeez.
his wives mysteriously disappeared. One they found hanging from the mill bridge.
Wow.
The 6th wife's the only one that he didn't kill.
Mm-hmm.
And the brother of the wife found out that she was married to him, and he was coming out to kill Mr. Slagle. Well, Mr. Slagle got the drop on him and shot him.
Mm-hmm.
Buried him in the road. They never did find his body.
Wow.
They got a local cemetery on the property where Slagle's buried and all his family.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been out there. We've caught figures on thermal out there standing in the tree line looking at us.
Mm.
And you'll see deer in the thermal, and the deer don't even react to the figure standing there. So we knew it wasn't human.
Right. That's crazy.
We've caught a girl crying out there. Spirit box session. I caught his son on the spirit box.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had
Wow.
one investigator out there provoking them, and
Mm-hmm.
which I don't go for that because that stirs up a whole bunch of hornet's nest that gets somebody hurt.
Right.
And she was saying that Mr. Slagle looked like an asshole, and next thing you know, here comes a rock flying through the trees at us.
Wow. That's crazy.
Laura said, I know someone that just bought a funeral home in Southwest Virginia.
Oh, wow. That would be an interesting place.
Yeah, funeral homes are. You get some activity in funeral homes.
Mm-hmm.
We did this one abandoned hotel. I used to work on the golf course when I lived in New York, and we caught some paranormal activity in there. My dad and I were just walking through. It was abandoned,
Mhm.
and since I worked there, they gave me permission to go through the hotel. And him and I watched his door slam open with force and then slam shut.
Wow.
We thought maybe it was a homeless guy in there or something that didn't belong in there. We're up on like the 14th floor,
Mhm.
and he was coming one direction down the hallway, and I was coming the opposite when we both saw it. So we went in that room looking for it.
Mhm.
They couldn't hide under the bed because the bed sat close to the floor. The
Right.
place was so destroyed, so there was no place for him to hide, and there was nobody in there.
Wow.
We got down to the basement, and we seen this black figure go running through the basement and ran down one of the tunnels. So I told my
Wow.
dad, circle around, and I'm going to chase it down the tunnel, and I'll chase it right to you. Came out, went outside, and went down into one of the other building's basements, and we couldn't get down in there because the building was falling down.
Wow.
April Mueller said, old military buildings that used to be a morgue, been in one of those.
Mm.
Yeah, morgues are little, I mean, like Waverly Hills Sanatorium morgue is
Mhm.
active, especially if you slide in one of those
Oh
on one of them
gosh.
slabs inside there.
Mhm. Yep.
That's one of the other Waverly Hills challenges. You have to do it for 15 minutes by yourself in there.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I could do that. Maybe.
It's trust me, it's not that bad.
You just psych yourself out, right? That's just really
Yeah,
what it is.
if you let it
Yeah.
weigh on your mind, you psych yourself out when it comes to it.
Mhm.
Just go in there and do it, and just focus on what you're doing, and it don't bother you.
Mhm.
Laura says I went on tour of Liberty Island where there was a hospital. I've heard of
Mm.
Liberty Island. Well, it's like the Japan's got that suicide forest.
Yes. I forget it. Ayahuasca, something like that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
no joke. There was an influencer that got canceled because he found a dead body there and filmed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's usually two that follow my show from Japan. They usually come on, and they know exactly right where it is. They live near it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a scary place. I feel like anything outdoors is just less intimidating for some reason for me.
Laura said where the immigrants went through on Liberty Island.
Ellis Isle? Is that Ellis
Liber-
Isle or
Liberty Island.
oh, okay.
April says my husband was Navy, and Portsmouth Naval Old Hospital was haunted. I'm
Hmm.
sure it has not been investigated. Yeah, Portsmouth, Ohio is one of the most active. It's on the top 3 places in Ohio that's haunted.
Mhm.
We did a private residential case out there in Ohio, and we were downtown Portsmouth, and we actually ate lunch in a old mob speakeasy.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
And right across the street, there's an antique store there that's haunted. And I guess
Mhm.
he had like 4 or 5 psychics up on the 4th floor, and they weren't even there for 10 minutes. They ran out screaming and crying.
Wow.
So that's on one of our lists to investigate. The guy wants us to come out and investigate it.
Wow. That's very cool.
And even at Gettysburg, we went and investigated the battlefields
Mhm.
and got activity during broad daylight out there.
Mhm.
heard cannon fire. We seen smoke rise up over the tree after we heard the cannon fire.
Wow.
Was up on a little round top, and I peeked over the ledge. And there's this rock formation standing up, and here's a soldier staring at me.
Wow. That was one of the bloodiest battles, so that would make sense.
Yep.
Mhm.
We went down on the bloody field, and that's where I captured a man in Chinese armor
Wow.
on camera. Carol
Mhm.
Garcia, who's a viewer of the show, she was actually the one that spotted it. I was live on Facebook, and I was just talking to the audience about the history and stuff. And
Mhm.
next thing you know, I guess about 8:47 minutes in, she spotted it.
Wow.
And I had a family member get killed there, John Franklin Reynolds. He was shot off
Mm.
his horse at Reynolds Woods. Greg said we had a crazy challenge. We had in the East Cell Block on the 3rd tier at Mansfield Reformatory. That's on my bucket list to investigate. Mansfield, and then West Virginia State Penitentiary is another
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
Pennhurst,
Pennhurst, I've heard a lot about.
that's another one on my bucket list. So far, I've crossed a few off.
I
Missouri
need to
State.
I
Missouri
need to
State.
focus more here because all of my stuff is like abroad. I need to get back in the States a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Mhm.
I was able to cross Gettysburg off in Missouri State and Waverly Hills, and Octagon Hall was another one in Kentucky. And Greg said if Triangular Field, yeah, that's an active hotspot in Gettysburg.
Mm.
That's just right behind Devil's Den up there.
Okay.
What about the one on the island? Are you talking about Alcatraz?
Mhm. Alcatraz is legendary.
That's on my list too to investigate. They say that's pretty haunted. I remember Ghost Lab was out there.
Mhm.
That's one of their favorite places to investigate was Alcatraz.
Mhm.
Well, that used to be a military base, I believe, before it became a prison.
And it held some very famous people there.
Yeah, Al Capone,
Mhm.
Babyface Nelson, all kinds of.
We just did when we were in the Smokies for Weird World, we did like a tour of Alcatraz East, which is like a crime museum that's over there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like a display to show you what Al Capone's cell looked like. And just in comparison to what it's like, as lavish as it could possibly be. Like he was treated very well in his cell.
Yeah. Well, he's still his cell over in Eastern States Penitentiary in
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. He was housed in there too. They still got his cell set up from when he was in there.
Mhm.
He had a bookshelf, a lamp, belt
Mhm.
chair.
The whole shebang.
He's got ties out here. He used to own a hotel out here in Missouri.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually for sale right now. Somebody opened it up as a bed and breakfast, and they ended up putting it up for sale. We actually did an investigation not too far from there at somebody's house.
Wow.
Greg said the Birdman of Alcatraz. Yep. April asked, ever look at Edgar Casey stuff? I heard
Yes.
he had a place in Virginia somewhere.
Yeah, so the Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment is in Virginia Beach, and I frequented there when I was younger. And it's a spiritual center. They focus on kind of psychic phenomena, things of that nature, and they also have like a wellness center there. And it's an interesting place. And That's in Virginia Beach. And then there's also, we featured them in the first season of Weird World too. And then there's also a strange, like completely unassociated counter place that's in, it's in Faber. It's near Charlottesville, called the Monroe Institute. And I do some blog writing for them too. And it's like a center that focuses on inducing different states of consciousness through audio technology. So they're using like binaural beats and things like that to kind of shift you through altered states. And the idea is like they focus on having out of body experiences, but there's a lot of other things, that can come from that too. And it's interesting because the ARE, Edgar Cayce Center, and the Monroe Institute, they all have the same kind of belief systems, but just a different way they articulate it. So they have like different words that mean the same thing across both of them, but they're strangely enough both in Virginia, though I don't think it was like, intentional, but like Edgar Cayce came to Virginia to be by the water. And then the other one's like in the mountains near Charlottesville.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
It's really interesting. They'll do like brain maps at the Monroe Institute and kind of show you what your brain looks like while you're meditating in different states of awareness.
Laura said, I swear I had an out of body experience.
I feel like it's way more common than, people realize too. And a lot of times it happens accidentally. And I mean, I went through when I was pretty much 13, maybe until I was an adult, I had sleep paralysis almost every day. And that was, that's kind of like, it's very similar to the idea of what an out of body experience would be, except it's like, a lot of people think that's the first step to having an out of body experience or whatever, you don't know, but it was very alarming and terrifying. And it kind of had me become more comfortable, I guess, with myself and learn techniques about getting out of it and how to deal with it.
Yeah, Laura said she was looking down on herself.
Mm-hmm. Should read Journeys Out of Body by Robert Monroe. He's the guy that founded the Monroe Institute. And he describes his first out of body experience like that. And it's very interesting. He was sleeping and then he's just looking down and he's like, that's me and that's my wife and what's happening. And then it was over. And that's kind of what drove him to find and create the Monroe Institute.
Right.
They're the ones that had the like CIA research done on them too.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like even the ones that have near death experiences too.
Mm-hmm. They do a lot with NDEs there. And the gateway tapes were with the CIA. They sent people to the Monroe Institute to try to like create a psychic division for the government back when they thought Russia was doing it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. There was a whole file they declassified on that a few years back when they did those declassifications, and it's really interesting.
Well, that's like my dad. My dad had a near death experience. He was in a car accident and died 3 times, and they brought him back, and that's why he's got the abilities he's got from it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he remembers just seeing a white light going around and hearing, because your hearing is the last thing to go, and he was hearing nuns saying he isn't going to make it. And he woke up to him reading his last rites.
Wow.
So he's one of those. He's got that abilities where he can see spirits, hear them. He can read people, and well, you saw it when you read your doll. So
yeah.
He told me to tell you, said hi. He remembered who you were.
Tell him I said hi back.
Oh, he's watching. So, yeah, like Greg Koss said, remote viewing is another thing. A lot of people do that.
Yes, remote viewing is also at the Monroe Institute. I'm terrible at it.
I can do it. I mean, I had a near-death experience at 12 and died and came back. I had a seizure because I was running a severe fever. And now I have that abilities too, where I can see him and hear him. And So I use it in this field to help people with our cases that we do, and
Mhm.
because we deal with a lot of residential cases more than like your famous places. We do a lot of residential.
Mhm. Mhm. That's always more interesting to me. I don't know. I liked the original ghost hunters when they just went to people's houses. I don't know, I
Yeah,
thought that was more I don't know, I was more connected to that.
yeah. It's an interesting because you've got a lot of different energies going on,
Mhm.
and then you're more of like a doing psychology. Plus, you're also background checking people and doing all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff, and it's more in depth into the research of the paranormal than going out thrill seeking in these famous places.
Mhm.
You're actually helping somebody that's dealing with paranormal issues that don't know who to turn to. People think they're crazy. It's like
Mhm.
Tony and I were talking, Tony Sparrow and I, we were talking about like some of these ones that get diagnosed schizophrenic and people are thinking they're crazy, so they lock them up in a mental institution. How do you know they're not dealing with something else? It's not schizophrenic, it's maybe something paranormal, something demonic.
Mhm.
You don't know that for a fact.
Mhm.
Laura says, I can't imagine a haunting in my house. And majority of it in the house is somebody that once owned a house
Mhm.
that died there. They're possibly waiting for a loved one to leave. Maybe the loved one is still alive and just sold the house, and they're waiting for that one to come, and then they'll leave together, or it's just standing its ground protecting its building.
Mhm.
Because to them, you're trespassing in their space.
Right.
So that's why they get aggressive because it's like your own house, your own dwelling. If you break into somebody's house, what are they going to do? They're going to want to hurt you
Right.
because they feel threatened. So that's
Mhm.
what a same scenario with a ghost that doesn't realize they're dead and they still think they're living in the house.
Mhm.
And it could be the last place they saw when they died, too.
Right. Right.
So a lot of them get trapped. Laura said people are opening their eyes now.
Mhm.
And I mean, like your demonic stuff is rare too in cases. I mean,
Mhm.
you'll get them, but they're very rare when you know when you're dealing with something demonic. You can tell the difference between your regular ghost and your demonic stuff.
Yeah.
And trust me, demonic entities are no fun. They take their toll on you.
Yeah, luckily I haven't experienced much in that realm, thankfully.
Ever seen or do you believe in hellhounds?
Hmm. I don't know, have you? I haven't.
I've never seen a hellhound, but I've heard of them. There's a cemetery in Brunswick, Missouri that's got reported hellhounds in it,
Mhm.
and the cemetery shifts. There was a group that spent a couple years out there, and this was before you could. They were making diagrams, of pictures, and stuff of maps of the cemetery when the trees would shift, stones would shift, fence would
Mhm.
shift, and then when the digital cameras came out, then they started snapping digital photos of it.
It's interesting. It reminds me of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Right? And they
Yeah.
say there's hellhounds in there as well in that cemetery.
Mhm.
Laura Cameron said Ed Warren. What about Ed Warren, Laura? I'll try to answer it the best I can. I never did get to meet Ed and Lorraine, so
You know, when I did my interview for Weird World, we were going up and we were going to meet Lorraine, and she actually passed like the week before.
Uh,
I know, so we didn't get the chance to meet her, but I've heard wonderful things.
yeah, Laura, Ed was a non-ordained demonologist. Him and Lorraine, that's what they studied, was the demonic field.
It was very cool getting to go into his office there in the occult museum and getting to see his old equipment and like the tapes that he used, and I
Oh yeah,
love the history stuff. It was very cool.
I love they brought it out to the Warrens Paracon. I was telling Wade
Mhm.
that I was glad they did that because then people could actually see what Ed and Lorraine actually used back in the day
Yeah,
to do their research.
it was a different world back then.
Yeah, to see that old tape recorders of his.
Yes, they're huge.
Yeah,
It's like I have a friend that, he used to film for Nat Geo like way back in the day. And he would have to carry these giant packs like in the jungle. I mean, like these huge, ridiculous, like he wobbles now because he's on one side with this,
yeah,
oblong, gigantic piece of equipment that has to like carry with them to transmit stuff. You're like, what is different world? Now it's like, this big.
yeah. Well, that's even like when Taps Ghost Hunters first come out. Them sound guys that they're carrying these big
Yeah.
packs on them, and then when they would have the experiences too, like Taps was having.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I love the original Ghost Hunters. That's kind of what got me into all of that. I remember when I like was early when I was just out of college and it had Ghost Hunters and Destination Truth were like
Yeah,
my guilty pleasure sci-fi Wednesday nights.
they were actually mine too. I would watch those too.
um, Josh Gates is a member of the Explorers Club too, and he hosts our gala events, and
Oh, awesome!
it was very cool. I mean, we've done a few of those together, and he's very fun. He's one of my like, he inspired me very much.
Greg wanted to know: are you gifted?
Maybe yes. I mean, I grew up in a lot of the paranormal, the psychic stuff. I was very clairsentient, and it was something that I kind of shut off very young because I didn't, I just I didn't know how to process it, so I kind of, closed it out. And I it's something that I explore, especially with the meditation, but in a controlled environment like meditation. I love doing my like the Monroe Institute, the exercises, the things like that, and that's kind of when I allow myself to explore that more because I'm just all over the world and so many different places and so many different things, and I don't want to ever be too open.
Yeah, that's a smart way. Especially like the ones that know how to channel, because you can
Mhm.
channel something into your body real quick.
Yes. Yes.
There was a gifted medium over, I think he's in England. He's passed on now. He would
Mhm.
do that. He was actually on the show Most Haunted. Derek
Okay.
Derek Akora.
Mhm.
He would do a lot of that channeling into those spirits and let the spirits take over his body. And
That's scary to me. I don't it's like it's very unsafe in my opinion. It's too much for me.
yeah, you have to have a buddy system, someone that you can trust with you if you're going to do something like that.
Mhm.
That knows telltale signs when to pull you out of it. That's
Mhm.
even doing Estes. You need to have someone with you that knows, because Estes too, you're opening that doorway to spirit communication. You're letting
Mhm.
something in. So
Yeah.
you have to be very careful with that, and all your senses are blocked with the
Yeah.
blindfold, and you got them headphones on.
Yeah.
We've done it without the spirit box, where you use your third eye for it,
Mm.
with the blindfolds on and the headphones where you can't hear nothing.
Mhm.
and use your abilities for it.
Mhm.
That's an interesting feeling when you do that.
Mhm.
We did that in Missouri State, and I was channeling into the firebug,
Mhm.
and he's very hard to actually come in contact with.
Mhm.
Then I was picking up the number 20, which I was able to verify later from Wade that he had all the stuff in cell 20, and the spirit of cell 20 was mad because they were putting stuff in his cell, and he wanted to be left alone, and they were just disrupting everything.
Mhm.
And then we were picking up on their museum objects upstairs, some leftover energy from them when they packed them up. And then I got going, and all of a sudden, something dark showed itself and under the blindfold. I was like, "Nope, we're done. I'm not talking to you." Greg goes, "You were not kidding." Laura goes, "Oh my god." Well, that's even like mirror scrying too is another good example for that. That will let something in at you also.
Mhm.
And for people that don't know, mirror scrying is where you take low light and you stare into a mirror, and in a haunted location, your face starts changing to something else, which they say that mirrors are portals to the spirit world. So
Mhm.
they're like doorways. That's why you never put two mirrors facing each other.
Mhm. I said historical, archaeological, anthropological stuff. I was playing with rune stones not too long ago.
Oh,
That's
okay.
fun. Those are very interesting. It's like tarot cards where it has like a very unique way and strategy to like decipher it.
See, even tarot cards are the same thing too. They're like Ouija boards. If you do them wrong and you're not skilled at it,
Mhm.
you can open that door. We got called on one where a lady did that.
Mhm.
She was playing with tarot cards and she conjured up three things in her home. And she was diagnosed schizophrenic, so
Mhm.
she was just easy target for it.
Right.
But it was like three different cultures of entities that were in her home. She had three sets of tarot cards from different countries,
Mhm.
one from Turkey, one from China, and Japan.
Mhm.
And for us, we can't, our cleansings aren't going to work for something like that.
Right.
And so we ended up taking the cards out of there. We got rid of them.
Mhm.
We usually send all that haunted stuff off to our relatives, Nesper and John
Mhm.
Zaffis.
Mhm.
Greg said ruin stones.
Mhm.
I've heard
They're
people use them.
They're interesting. Yeah, they're quite interesting, and I don't know. I thought it was interesting to learn the alphabet that's on them because it has unique meanings with what you pull, and there's a bunch of different spreads like with tarot.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, buddy of mine, he has those and he knows how to do them.
Mhm.
I've never got into them. Laura said, "John, he's cool." Yep, the godfather of the
Mhm.
paranormal. My cousin Johnny Zaffis.
Mhm.
He's actually the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Mhm.
I just had him on here not too long ago.
That's cool.
He's a good man to learn from too. If you want to learn anything paranormal, speak to
Mhm.
John and them.
Mhm.
Even Nesper though, because they've worked so close with Ed and Lorraine. They
Mhm.
April says I don't have to try and communicate with them. They do all the time in my dreams.
Dreams are a gateway.
Yep. Have a good night, Greg. Thanks for coming in.
Have a good night.
We got about 10 minutes left, so anybody got any more questions, feel free to put them up in the chat. But yeah, like I said, if you come out to Missouri, just let us know. We'll show you some historic stuff. We got a Pythian castle out here.
That's cool. Have
Then
you
we got
ever been to the Winchester House?
no, that's another one that's on my list to go to. Winchester Mystery House.
That one is it inspired the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney. And it's wild. That's a really we did that one and just it's like a maze. And they'll do like Halloween mazes through it now, which is crazy because it's a lot of stairs. You're just up and down and all around. Like you move through it so fast. And
Greg said, "Nice to meet you, Mallory."
nice to meet you, Greg.
Laura said Zach Bagans was there. Oh yeah, I'm sure he's been there.
Yeah, there was several of them I think that were out there, and
Taps was out there, I know.
That was like an early Taps too. I remember that. And it's a very cool place. It's not what you would expect though, because it's been so built up around it. So you see this beautiful towering house and you think that there's just like nature beside it.
Right.
And it has gardens, but it's not. There's like a Walmart or a Target like parking lot right next to it. You're like, oh, it's just in the heart of San Jose. Like, well, that's not what I expected.
Why would you want to build right next to that house?
Right.
Well, I know. I remember watching that on Taps and watching them. I think Steve got lost like 10 times in that house trying to set cameras up.
It's a maze. It used to be, it was 6 stories tall at one point until the earthquake happened, and then now it's like 3. But it is a maze, and there's I mean, I don't know. You get lost. It took us 3 hours to get through our tour of it.
Because I remember him opening one door, and when he opened it, it was just a big drop off to the outside.
Yeah, there's a door that leads to it's from the 2nd story out into the garden. There's a stairwell to nowhere that just like ends at the ceiling. There's some strange anomalies there.
Laura said she must have felt so guilty.
Yeah, that's the story. The legend for the Sarah Winchester was that like what they say is that she continued to build until she died. I think it was 38 years because of the people that were killed by the Winchester rifles, because she was the heiress to their Winchester rifle fortune.
Yeah.
She gets a bad rep too though, because I think she loved architecture and she hired a lot of people and did a lot of good for the people that worked for her and kind of really took care of those people. And she was kind of demonized by society because she was quiet and not very sociable and didn't go out much. So she was like, oh, that crazy woman building the house that doesn't come out. They kind of put a lot of slander on her when she was alive, and those legends continue on, but she actually did a lot of good for like the community in San Jose. And I mean, her house is still like this fun, wild space today.
Right. Have you done the Lizzie Borden house yet?
No, but I want to. That one intimidates me just because of how disturbing that was. I don't know. I want to. Have you?
Not yet. I need to go up there because I'm actually related to Lizzie Borden.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a good one. The Myrtles Plantation is the top of my list, definitely. And I'm excited. Like I don't quite know what we're gonna do in Salem yet, but I'm excited to just be in Salem because it's so iconic.
Right. Yeah. I've never been to Salem, but I've been by it.
Mm. There's also this Little People Village in Connecticut that we're gonna pass through on the way up that I wanna do, where there was, like, a woman that had gone crazy and like, she wanted to rule over her people around her, so her husband built her this tiny village of, like, miniature houses in the woods by their house for her to rule over. It's a Little People Village is what it's called, and there's, like, a throne where she would sit around all these little houses in the woods in Connecticut.
Right.
And I want to stop by there because it's fascinating. Oh yeah, the Hawthorne Hotel. I've heard a lot about the Hawthorne Hotel.
April, hope you broke any generational curses, all those relatives. Hey, I just found out about a year ago about all those relatives doing genealogy.
Mm.
Never heard of that woman.
Oh, Sarah Winchester. She's a character. She was from New Haven, Connecticut, I think. She's buried in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
but then the house is in San Jose.
We're supposed to go up to Rhode Island and go check out the vampire graves up there
Mm. That's
with
cool.
Keith and Carl Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
But you met Keith was at the Warrens Paracon.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to go up with them and investigate some stuff. We were going to go to the Conjuring house, but now with all
Mm.
that mess going on, and
Is it getting torn down? Is that what's happening?
no, they just closed it.
Oh, okay. They just closed it.
Yeah, the city closed it because she was operating without a business license, and workman's comp
Um,
insurance, and she wasn't paying her employees, I guess.
that's no good.
Laura said it was the woman that who ruled the little
Oh, the
people.
Little People Village. Yeah, my friend just told me about that. We did a whole thing on the Queen Mary in October, and we filmed an episode of the show on the Queen Mary, and then we did Dark Harbor afterwards because they have the best Halloween experience of any place I've ever been because there's like a park outside of it. So some of the mazes are out in the park, and then some of them are on the boat. So you're walking through like the old steam rooms and stuff of the boat in these like creepy haunted mazes. And I used to always go with my friends, so I met her there, and she was telling me about the Little People Village. And when I told her I was going to Salem, she's like, "You have to stop in there." So now it's on the list.
Laura said no license for her. That's for the lady that owns Conjuring House.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing is just a mess.
The Queen Mary is very cool too. Yeah. The B340 is like supposed to be the really haunted room, and they have it all decked out to look like this Victorian era room now, and it's pretty wild.
Nobody sabotaged you guys out there like they did Taps when Taps filmed Ghost Hunters out there.
I saw that. That was crazy.
Somebody went in and messed with their camera.
Mm-hmm. I saw that. That was wild. That was I think about that every time I go on the Queen Mary.
Yeah, that was a shame that they had to go on there and mess with their stuff.
Yeah.
I hate when people do that and then try to fake stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That was crazy. They just recently opened back up too, I think. I think the Queen Mary was closed from COVID and then was closed for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then just recently
So,
opened back up.
well, we
It's
got about 3 minutes left. Laura said there was a morgue on the ship.
Mm.
Anybody's got any more questions, feel free to post them up. And we're getting ready to close the show out here in a few minutes. So if you want to get your last minute questions in for Mallory, feel free. If people want to get a hold of you to book you for events, Paracons, how can they reach you?
So you guys can reach me at mallorysadventures@gmail.com. It's MALORIES adventures@gmail.com. My website is the same. It's mallorysadventures.com. And you can watch Weird World Adventures on Amazon Prime. And you can also find our podcast under the same name wherever you podcast.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. And we're Weird World Adventures on Facebook, and I think Mallory's Adventures on Instagram. So.
Oh, you're welcome, Laura. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in every Saturday. I'm on every Saturday night. Unless I'm doing an investigation, then I won't be on, but there'll always be something on Saturday night. So if you want to hang backstage for a second, I'm going to close the show out. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And just hang back 1 minute. I'm going to close the show out.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. It was a good show. A lot of awesome information. Thank you guys for your comments and questions. We will see you guys next week. Same time, same channel. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe out there and stay humble. And we're off.